Good morning Year 5 and welcome to today's maths lesson. And like always, we're going to start our maths lesson with our flashback 4 questions, which I've got on the screen for you now. So what I want you to do is pause this video and answer these 5 questions, including the bonus question, in your maths book, please. Okay, let's go through the answers together. So question 1, calculate 9,785 subtract 978. So you could have used your column subtraction to get the answer 8,807. Question 2, what is 100 less than 8,099? So what you could have done to answer this question is added on your 1, subtracted 100, and then take the 1 back off to get the answer 7,999. Question 3, divide 865 by 5. You could have used your bus stop method to get the answer 173. Question 4, write down a 5-digit number with a 6 in the hundreds column. So we'll have lots of different answers for this question, but as long as you have 5 digits and a 6 in the hundreds column, your answer will be correct. So for example, I've got 57,621. I've got 5 digits and a 6 in the hundreds column. Okay, and lastly, onto our bonus question. So, what time is it and can you say it in another way? We know the time is 8 o'clock because our small hand is on the 8 and our big hand is on the 12. So that means it's the 8th hour. So if it was AM on a digital clock, it would look like this. We say 8 o'clock. And if it was PM on a digital clock, it would look like this, 20:00. Okay, so Year 5, now what you need to do is pause the video and mark your flashback 4 answers in a different coloured pen. Okay, and now we're going to start our math lesson. But before we do that, could you please pause the video again and write the date in the yellow in your maths book. So the date should be the 9th of the 2nd, 21. And the learning objective is to complete a symmetric figure. So pause the video to do that now for me. Okay, and to start our lesson, I've got a starter on the screen. And it says, which is the correct example? Example 1 or example 2? So it's asking you which example has been reflected, and that's the key word, reflected correctly. So what I want you to do is pause the video and make an informed guess about which example has been reflected correctly, and then we'll have a look at the answer together. Okay, so the answer to that question is that example 2, this one here, is the correct example. And that is because when we complete a symmetric figure, the figure must be reflected using the mirror line. So if this is our mirror line, whatever is on this side must be reflected this side as well. So if we go back to our examples, this example has been translated because each square has moved 3 spaces to the right, whereas example 2 has been reflected because our example on this side has been reflected to be the same on the other side of the mirror line. And that is what we're thinking about today. We're thinking about how, if we have this here, we can reflect it on the other side of the mirror line to get our correct example. Okay, so I've got another question for you on the screen now, which is the similar idea to what we've just been looking at. So it says, which is the correct example? So has example 1 been reflected correctly, or has example 2 been reflected correctly? And think about what it means. When there's a mirror line, it should look exactly the same on the opposite side. It should be reflected, okay? So pause the video and have a go at answering this question this time. Okay, so the answer to that question is example 1 is correct. And remember, the figure must be reflected, not translated. So if we go back, example 2 has been translated, which means it's moved up, down, left or right. And in this case, each square has moved 2 spaces to the right. So this has not been reflected. Whereas if we look at example 1, it has been reflected. And one way we can know it's been reflected is if we look at each individual square. So if I look at this square here, I know that there's one square before it. So there's one blue square, then our square. So the same needs to happen on the right side of the mirror line. So there's another blue square and then our red square again. Then if I look at this square here, it's exactly on the mirror line, isn't it? So then the same thing needs to happen on the other side of the mirror line. And if we look at our last square here, again, I've got one blue square before it, so the same needs to happen on the right side. There's one blue square and then the red square. So that is what it means when something has been reflected. Okay, so that's important for you to know during this lesson. Okay, and for those of you that are finding that a difficult thing to visualise, I suggest that you go onto this website and have a practice before we move on. So this is the name of the website, and this is the game on the website. So you basically put your squares in on the left side of the mirror line, and then if you click this button here, your reflection will show on the right side of the mirror line. So if you're finding it hard to imagine how your shape can be reflected, this is a good way for you to see what happens. Okay? However, if you're feeling confident, keep watching and we'll move on to the next step of the lesson. For those of you that do want to practice this skill, go onto the website, have a few minutes to do that, and then come back and we'll move on. Okay, so for those of you that are feeling a bit more confident, I've got a question, and it is, how would we complete this symmetrical figure? So we've got this on the left of the mirror line, and we want to reflect it to the right of the mirror line. So you could either pause the video and have a little drawing in your books of the same symmetric figure and reflect it, or you could point with your fingers where you think our new reflection will go. Okay, so pause the video and have a little think about how to answer this question. Okay, and if you're still not sure, I'm now going to model how we reflect this symmetric figure. And I think everyone needs to watch this to get an idea of how you're going to do it in your maths book. So I'm going to start with the bottom square, and I need to reflect it onto the right side of the mirror line. So I know that this square is up against the mirror line, so I need to do the same on the right side. So I'm going to draw my reflected square here. So as you can see, it's the same on the left and the right of the mirror line. Now I'm going to look at this square here, and I know there's one square before this square against the mirror line. So I need to leave another square on the right side and then draw my new reflected square, which I'm going to do now. There we go. So as you can see so far, these two squares have been reflected correctly. Okay, now I'm going to look at this one here. So I can see that there's two squares before this red square, so there needs to be two on the right side as well, and then I'm going to draw my square reflected. Okay, and now I'm going to look at my last square here. So I can see there's three squares before it, so I need to leave three on this side and then draw my square reflected. Okay, so that is how we reflect or complete a symmetric figure on a grid. So we use the mirror line and do the same thing on the left to the right side of the mirror line. Okay, so I've got another example now that I'd like you to have a think about. So if you're feeling confident, you could either pause the video and complete this symmetric figure in your books, or you could point with the fingers where you think the new squares will go, or if you're still unsure, keep watching and I'll model how we do this one as well. So pause the video if you'd like to have a go at this one on your own. Okay, now I'm going to model how we complete this symmetric figure. And the important thing to think about is doing one square at a time, as this really helps break down the reflection process. So I'm going to start with my top square, and I can see there's one blue square before it. So I'm going to leave one blue square on the right side of the mirror line and then draw my reflected square. So they've both got one blue square before them in front of the mirror line. Okay, and now onto this square here. So I can see this time there's 2 squares before it. So I'm going to leave 2 squares on this side and draw my square here. And I can also see that these two are slightly connected in the vertex. So it looks the same on this side as well. Okay, now I'm going to leave a line because there's no squares here, and I'm going to move on to my next square. So again, there's 2 squares before it, and I'm going to leave 2 squares on the right side of the mirror line as well, and draw my new square. Okay, and onto our last square. This time there's 1 blue square before it, so I'm going to leave 1 this side and draw my new reflected square. And again, the vertices of each square here are connected. So there's 1 vertex connecting to another vertex. Okay, so if I look at my overall reflection, I can see that it's accurate because it looks the same but reflected onto the right side of the mirror line. So well done if you had a go at this and got it correct. If you didn't, check where you made your mistakes, and then if you watch me model it, we'll go on to the next part now. So we're all going to move on to the next slide now. Okay, so this time I'd like you all to have a go at reflecting this symmetric figure. So you've got your 3 red squares here, you've got a line here, the mirror line, and you need to reflect it onto the right side of the mirror line. So everyone pause the video now and have a go at completing this one in your maths book. Okay, so here are the step 1 questions of the worksheet. So you're applying the same skill we've just looked at, but using different examples. So here you need to reflect it onto the right, and the same with this one. And if any of you are finding this tricky, you can either message me or you can go back onto that website that helps you practice this skill. Okay, now we're going to move on to our explore phase step 2. And this time our mirror line has been moved so that it is horizontal. And I want you to think about, can we still complete our symmetric figure with our mirror line being horizontal? So just have a think, can we still do this? The answer to that question is yes. Just because the mirror line has been moved doesn't mean we can't still complete our symmetric figure. So again, if you're feeling confident, think about where our reflected squares will go, and if you'd like to watch me model it, then just stay on the video now. Okay, so as always, I'm going to start by doing 1 square at a time to keep it nice and simple. So I'm going to start with this square here, and this time I'm looking downwards. So how many squares are there underneath my red square? So I can see there's 1, 2, 3 blue squares underneath my red square. So therefore I need to leave 3 after the mirror line and then draw my new square. So as you can see, there are 3 squares before our red square, above and below the mirror line. So that has been reflected correctly. This time I'm going to look at these 2 squares here, and this time I'm going to have a go at doing these together. So I can see that there's 1 square, 1 blue square before my 2 red squares, and I know that these are connected, so they're going to stay together when I reflect it. So I need to leave 1 blue square after my mirror line, and then I could draw my 2 red squares at once. So there's 1, and here's going to be another, and they're connected. So if we look at this part of our reflection, we can see so far that it's gone well. Okay, I'm moving on. So here we don't need to do any squares as there's none in this column. In our next column, however, there is a red square, and there are 2 blue squares underneath it. So I need to do the same this side of the mirror line. So I'm going to leave 2 blue squares, and then I'm going to draw my red square here. Okay, and on to the next column. So here I have just 1 blue square beneath my red square, so I'm going to leave 1 after the mirror line and draw my new reflected square. And again, you can see that these 2 connect at the vertex, and so do these, but reflected. And lastly, onto our last square. So this square has 3 squares below it, so I'm going to leave 3 after the mirror line and then draw my new square. Okay, So as you can see, our symmetric figure has been completed by reflecting this example here onto the bottom of our mirror line. So it's not been translated, it's been reflected. So well done if you had a go at this and got it correct, and well done if you understand the process. Okay, so this example is a bit trickier, and this time we need to think of each of the black lines as a mirror line. So we're going to reflect it onto the right, then we're going to reflect it using this mirror line below, then we're going to reflect that onto the right, and so on. So each black line acts as a mirror line from which we reflect our examples. So I'm going to model how we do this one, and then I've got another one for you to have a go at. So keep watching and I'll model how we do this kind of question. Okay, so firstly, I'm going to use this part of my mirror line as it's probably the easiest to start with. Okay, so I'm going to start with my top square, which has 2 blue squares before it. So I'm going to leave 2 after the mirror line and draw my reflected square. Okay, same with the second square. So I've got 1 square before it. I'm going to leave 1 here and draw my square here. Okay, and same with our last square here. So it's got 2 before the mirror line. So I'm going to leave 2 after and draw my new square. So as you can see, we've successfully reflected this shape onto the right side of the mirror line. Okay, and here's where it gets a bit more complicated. So now we need to use this horizontal line here as our mirror line to reflect these shapes onto the part beneath. So firstly, if I look at this square here, I know it's against the mirror line. So the square that is reflected also needs to be against the mirror line, like so. Okay, so we've reflected the first square. Now let's have a look at the second. So if I'm thinking about this mirror line here, it's got 1 square underneath, so I'm going to leave 1 past the mirror line and draw my new reflected square. Okay, so if I look at this one here, it's got its original square, it's got a blue square, then a red square. So I need the same process the other side. So I've got my red square, blue square, and then our original square, but reflected. So far we've reflected this to here and this shape to here, and now we need to finish it by reflecting this shape to here. So our mirror line is now this line here. So we can either reflect it from here or here, but I'm going to use this one to reflect. So thinking about our red square here, we've got 1 blue square before the mirror line, so I need to leave 1 after and draw my red square here. Then if I look at this one here, it's got 2 blue squares before the mirror line, so I'm going to leave 2 after and then I'm going to draw my red square. And you can see that these 2 are against the mirror line and so are these 2, so we're on track so far. Okay, and this square here, so we've got 2 blue squares before the mirror line, so I'm going to leave 2 after and draw my red square. Okay, so that is how we answer this type of question where we have 4 parts to reflect. So it looks like a lot, but if you break it down and think of each mirror line at a time, it's not so bad. So if you're feeling confident enough, I'd like you to have a go now. If you aren't feeling confident at this point, just keep watching and I'll model another example. So pause the video to have a go at this one if you can. Okay, let's have a look together then. So if you've already done this in your books, you can skip past the modelling part and check your answer. And if you're still unsure, then keep watching and I'll model how to do it. So we're going to start with our top square. We've got 1 blue square before the mirror line, so it goes blue, red. So the right side of the mirror line also needs to go blue, red. So then I'm going to leave a blue and draw my red square here. Okay, now onto our next square. So this time it goes red, blue, blue, or blank square, red. So we need to leave a blank, blank, and a red. So when you do this in your books, you could use another colour to help you remember how to reflect it. Okay, and on to our last square here. So we've got 3 squares before, so I need to leave 3 this side of the mirror line and draw my new square. Okay, so we've successfully reflected this example. Now we need to fill in our 2 boxes left. So I'm going to do it this way, and this is my new mirror line this time. So I'm going to start with the bottom square. I've got 1 square below it, so I need to leave 1 after, and then draw my new square here. Okay, now onto this square. So I've got 2 squares below it, so I need to leave 2 after the mirror line and then draw my red square. Okay, onto the third one. So below this red square I have 3 blue squares, so I need to leave 3 after the mirror line, 1, 2, 3, and then model my new square. Okay, we're getting there. So now we're on to our last one. So this time I'm reflecting this shape onto this side of the mirror line. So I'm going to start with my bottom shape. I've got 1 blue square before the mirror line, so I need to leave 1 after, and then draw my red square. Okay, and the next one, so I've got 2 blue squares before the mirror line, so I need to leave 2 after, and then draw my new square. And onto our last one, so I've got 3 blue squares before the mirror line, so I need to leave 3 here, and then draw my square. Okay, so now we can see the pattern. We've successfully reflected each shape using a different mirror line each time. So well done if you got this correct, and if you didn't, have a look at where you made your mistakes. Okay, so this time we have something a bit different. So this time our symmetric figure is using lines, not shapes. So how do you think we'd complete this one? Okay, so what we could think about is that there's 8 squares within our first half of our symmetric figure. So there also needs to be 8 on the right side of the mirror line when we reflect it. So what I need to do now is carry on these lines and make sure there's 8 squares within my completed figure. So I'm going to start from the mirror line, and because there's 4 squares along this side, I'm going to do 4 along this side. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 along this side, and 1, 2, 3, 4 along this side. So now I need to go down 2 squares because there's 2 on this side, so there needs to be 2 on this side. So as you can see, I'm going down and I'm staying in line with the shape on the left. And now I just need to join myself back to the mirror line to complete my symmetric figure. So as you can see, this shape on the left has been reflected onto the right, and I've used my knowledge of the squares to help me. So I've got 8 here and 8 here. Okay, so now I've got the step 2 questions on the screen for you now, and you need to go on to the next page to see 2C when you're ready. So make sure you're completing it correctly in your book, putting the squares in the same places, and perhaps using a different colour for when you reflect. So pause the video now to answer the step 2 questions in your books. And here is the step C question, which looks at the symmetrical figures using lines, not shapes. Okay, and for those of you that are feeling confident, we're now going on to the explore phase, step 3. So we have another symmetrical figure here, which we need to complete. And this time it's cutting through some squares, so it makes our job a bit harder. So think about what you can do to help you complete this symmetric figure. You could either have a go in your books now, or just have a little think by looking at the one on the screen. Okay, so let's have a look together. So this time my mirror line is horizontal, so I know that I'm reflecting underneath. And if I look at this line here, I know it goes along 3 squares. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and draw a line underneath that goes along 3 squares. 1, 2, and 3. So far we've reflected this line here underneath the mirror line. Now what I'm going to do is do this side. so it makes it easier to join these two together once I'm done. So this line here goes along 2 squares, so I'm going to go along 2 squares underneath as well. 1, 2. So now, because I've reflected those 2 lines correctly, my job has been made easier to connect these 2 together. So all I need to do is draw a line between the 2. I can also think that my line goes from 1 square to 1 square down. There's only 1 square in between these 2 lines. And if I look at the top, that's the same. It goes up, but there's only 1 square between it. So we have now successfully reflected this symmetrical figure using the mirror line. So now I've got one for you to have a go at. So you can either use your fingers and point where you think the new lines will go, or you could have a go in your books if you feel like it. Okay, so this time I'm going to do the same thing, where I reflect my 2 easier points, and then I can join it together to make my longer line. So if I know that this part here cuts through 1 square exactly, I'm going to do the same on the other side of the mirror line. So I'm going to start here and I'm going to cut through 1 square, just like this side has done. Now I'm going to look at the top of my rectangle and I'm going to do the same thing. So this line here cuts through 1 square diagonally, so I'm going to do the same thing here. And now I've made my job easier to connect these 2 together, as I can just draw 1 line going from 1 vertex to the other. There we go. So that is how we reflect this shape here and complete our symmetric figure using the mirror line. So well done if you had a go at that and got it correct. If you had a go and got it incorrect, have a look at where you made your mistakes. Okay, so here are the step 3 questions. So they're similar to what we've just looked at, with a diagonal mirror line for you to reflect. Okay, and for those of you that are feeling really confident, here is the extension. And once you complete this extension, it should create a nice colourful pattern. So try and use different colours when you reflect each part like they've done here. Okay, well done everyone for completing your independent work. I know this lesson is something a bit more trickier, but if you've got the hang of it, that's great. And if not, I'll show you what you can do at the end to practice. So here are the step 1 answers. So pause the video to mark your work. Here are the step 2 answers. So pause the video to mark your work. Here are the step 3 answers. So pause the video to mark your work. And here is the extension answer. So like I talked about, it creates a nice colourful pattern. So what I will say before I go is, like I said at the start of the lesson, if you're finding this concept difficult, go onto this website and just have a go. So like I said, you put some squares in the left side of the mirror line, and then you can click this button here to see what the reflection will be. You don't have to use this button, you could have a go yourself, but if you're finding it really hard, click this button here and it will show you what should happen when you reflect it correctly. Okay? Okay, Year 5, thanks for all your hard work today. I know it's something a bit different, but well done if you just had a go. I'll see you again soon for another maths lesson, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Bye.